Hello everyone, Gainer here from Property Made Simple, where property solutions are simple for you guys. And today I'll be covering something really very interesting, which is about investing, right? Property investment. And today we'll be talking about this thing called supply and demand. And you probably will hear this in many, probably a lot of property gurus will always share with you, supply and demand, supply and demand. And that's why today, in this video, I'm going to share with you how you are able to use this supply and demand concept to analyze for a property and to determine whether it is a good investment or not. So if you are new to this channel, I hope you can help me to like and subscribe. Thanks. So what is actually supply and demand, right? So from now you probably can see in my screen, right? So I just want to make it very easy and simple for you guys to understand, right? And especially when you look in the perspective of property investment. If let's say we are looking into an area where we want to invest, right? Or buy, so supply means are there a lot or are there actually very little of those units, right? And demand is something really very important, which means that are there buyers keen to buy the place, right? That is what we mean by supply and demand. And that's why from this slide, you will understand if the supply is a lot, right? But the demand is not a lot. Meaning to say, if there's huge supply in that area, but the buyers buying in that area, as in the demand is not there, right? So if you have this, it means that it may not be a very good investment if you want to invest in that place, right? And so likewise, if the supply is low, right, but the demand is very strong, right, meaning to say it will be a very good investment because there are a lot of people who wants to buy in that piece of area, but because the supply is too little, and that's why, it will be a good investment because people will be buying and buying and buying, right? Stuff like that. And today I want to use this case study, this very simple case study to see how we can use this supply and demand concept to actually determine whether this property is a good investment. And for this instance, if you really look at my screen, I'll be talking about this place called My Manhattan, right? So just a little bit brief understanding about where is this place. This place is actually at Simei area. So My Manhattan is actually a project that's just beside the Simei MRT and also the East Point Mall. This actually is a new launch during 2011. So if we can just go back to the history in year 2011 and trying to understand using this supply and demand concept to determine whether My Manhattan is actually a good investment to buy, okay? So let's go deep down into the details, right? So I just want to, give a brief, let you guys see the whole entire area, right? So My Manhattan is actually launched in 2011, it's going to TOP in 2014. And during then, in 2011, the developers are selling it at around 1,002 to 1,003 per square foot, which is, if you see my screen, is actually quite expensive, right? And we look at what the neighboring projects they are selling, right? Those are actually the resale projects. For example, if you really look, Modena, right? Modena is actually, the tenure is 1997. It actually TOP in year 2001, right? And during 2011, okay, so you will see that I've done a lot of comparison based on 2011 prices. Now, why is it so? Because if today I want to buy a My Manhattan at 1,002 to 1,003 per square foot, I probably just want to understand a little bit about what are the resale prices they are selling, right? So for this instance in year 2011, Modena, actually there are some resale units that are sold around $700 to $900 per square foot, right? And as for the next project, which is Tropical Spring, right? The tenure is also in 1997 and it TOP in 2002, right? During then, their PSF was selling also around $800 to $900 per square foot. And probably let's take a look at this much older project, which is Simei Green, right? The tenure is 1996 and TOP in 1999. And the average PSF that was selling in year 2011 was actually $600 to $800 per square foot, right? And one of the newest property during that time in year 2011 was actually in Double Bay Residences, right? It was launched in year 2008, TOP in year 2012, and the PSF was selling around $900 to $1,000 per square foot in year 2011. So you can understand that just by this brief, you can see all the different projects and they are selling prices in year 2011. You will notice that my Manhattan during then was actually quite expensive because it is selling at 1,002 to 1,003 per square foot. And that's why we are trying to use this supply and demand concept to understand whether during that time, if the buyer buys mine in Manhattan, would it be a good purchase or would it be a bad purchase, right? Looking that the price difference, the gap is quite huge when it's compared to the neighboring resale properties, okay? So we go a little bit further down, we just want to understand how is the supply in this Simei area, right? So if we look at it, Modena actually has 230 units, Tropical Spring actually has 242 units, Double Bay has actually 646 units, and Simei Green has 602 units. So during the time when my Manhattan is launched, we need to understand how many projects are there, what are the number of units, and in the whole entire area of Simei, we will know that if we add up those condo units that are near to MRT within the MRT area, is a total of 1,720 units, which I add Modena, Tropical Spring, Double Bay, and Simei Green. So we will understand that the supply, as in the number of units available, is 1,720 units in Simei. Okay, so let's probably look at Tampines, which is just one MRT stop away from Simei, right? So if you look at Tampines, near Tampines MRT area, actually we don't have any of the condos. Based on what I see, we probably have a lot of shopping malls, the shopping malls, the hawker center, the stadium, stuff like that. So what I look at, we probably don't have any condos, and that's why there are no condos supply at Tampines MRT area that is at this area. So the supply is really very low at Tampines, which is just one MRT stop away, Simei. And let's go down to another MRT stop away from Simei, which is Tanah Merah. So if you look at Tanah Merah, there are actually quite a few condos, but based on the map which I just use it together for our analysis, we have to strike off this condo Urban Vista, we have to strike off Grandeur Park, and we have to strike off Glades. Why? Because during 2011, these three condos are not available. They are actually in 2013, and 2017. So during that time, we only have East Meadows, Casa Merah, Optima, and other Eco, and that's why we don't have a huge supply as well in Tanah Merah area. So overall, based on this, we can determine that if we want to invest in my Manhattan, the supply of condos units is actually not a lot. So it's actually on the lower end. But then again, how do we determine demand? All right, this is something that is tricky. Based on now, I want to share with you this analysis because if today I'm trying to analyze a project today, right, it's easy because I can have some tools to understand how is the demand. For this video, how do I determine the demand during then, right? It's a little bit tough, but I will share with you how I come up with this analysis, right? So the question is, how can we determine demand? Okay, so first of all, I just need to explain to you one thing. If when there's a huge demand, most likely there will be a surge in price during that period of time, right? Because it doesn't make sense if there's no demand and the price surge, right? Why do price surge? Because probably the supply is low, but there are a lot of people who wants to buy, and that's why when more and more buyers come in to the picture, they will push the prices up. And that's why for this right now you see in this screen, I will use this Double Bay, a few condos, resale condos, to share with you how is the demand in that area during that time. So we will see that in year 2011, why I use 2011 because my Manhattan is launched in year 2011. So in 2011, you can see the historical prices of Double Bay, it actually went up, right, in this area. That's why I put an arrow. So we can understand that the demand is strong at that area. Now let's take a look at Tropical Spring. Now same Tropical Spring in 2011, you can see that there's also a surge in demand because the prices went up accordingly. And likewise for Modena, if you look at the screen, it's exactly the same as well. There's a surge in prices and the demand, right? This is the PSF and there's surge in the price, right? And we look at Simei Green, Now, CMA Green, if you look at 201, exactly the same thing has happened. The price actually surged as well. So from all these telltale signs, we can actually understand that before we invest in My Manhattan in year 2011, we can determine that the supply is actually low, but there is demand in that area, right? And taking into the perspective that the prices for My Manhattan was actually quite expensive, but whether is it a good buy? That's another question. That's why we are using this supply and demand concept to determine whether, My Manhattan would be a good buy. So at the end of the day, those people who bought My Manhattan, this is the results, right? We will see that there are a total of 33 profitable transactions, and these are the units that actually make money. And unprofitable transactions, there are only 4, right? You can see from this, right? So, and people are making around 200 over 1,000, 190 over 1,000, right? Of course, the losses is also marginal. And that's why, the conclusion is that My Manhattan also make money even when during that time, it was quite expensive. And that's why, the conclusion of this video is that, we can actually understand a little bit more how we can use supply and demand as of this principle to understand whether, can we use this to analyze whether the following properties or the properties that you want to invest will be a good buy, right? So the conclusion from this video is that yes, generally for me, I'll use this supply and demand to check out whether this investment is a good buy. But there are still many, many factors. For example, the price point that you're buying and other areas, other factors that has to come into place, right? For the benefit of this video, the conclusion is yes, it's important for you to use this supply and demand principle to determine whether is it a good investment, right? So thanks a lot for watching this video, and I hope you learned something. And if you learned something, please remember to help me to click the subscribe button and also the like button. And I'll see you guys soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.